YouTube? How you feeling? How you living? What's good? It's your girl Francine. Today is Tuesday, and today and Wednesday and Thursday I'm going to do a segment I like to call Dispelling the Myths. Now, I'm calling it this because the subjects I'm going to talk about in the next 3 days are things that people think are true that just aren't, and they're not like Mythbusters type myths like you don't digest like chewing gum for 7 years or something like that. It stays in yourself, whatever the thing is. But it's like myths that people think about society, about people in society, that are 100% not really true statements. And the one we're doing today is probably the most obvious one of the most easiest ones to dispel, and that is black on black crime. There's always the dispute that you get anytime you talk about, well, you know, police brutality is bad. We need to get reform for police. We don't want to be killed by police. It's like, well, you're killing each other. What about black on black crime? You don't care about you killing each other, but you care about the police killing you. Why are you not concerned about that? Now, there's two very troubling things about that. Number one does not dispel the other. Both are serious issues. And also, the second thing is that police are supposed to not kill people. That's not their job. And also, black on black crime isn't really a thing. Now, I say that because crime in general is very interracial. And it's just been proven over time. And I'm going to get into statistics that show that. And also into some statistics that I found in researching this that I also found interesting. That isn't exactly about black on black crime, but is a very interesting indication of how crime rates in black communities are higher than other places. So with that being said, I will just get into it. Okay, so let's start off with something that I found very interesting. And before we get into the actual numbers and statistics, we have to look at how these statistics are taken and kind of how these numbers are generated. Now, two things that I found out that are very interesting is that A, statistics are only taken for cases in which there is one victim and one perpetrator. Now, if there is a perpetrator who kills multiple people, that's not in here. If there's a perpetrator if there's a victim that has multiple perpetrators, not in here. So things like mass shootings, massacres, spree killings, not in these statistics. Things like, people who work as a group to, maybe cause a robbery and then they had a felony murder in it, that's not in here either. So that's really interesting to look into, because some of these people who could be counted from other races or other, types of crimes aren't in these statistics. Another very interesting thing that you got to keep in mind when you're looking at these statistics is that these statistics are only for solved cases. Now, you may be like, okay, duh. But when you look at the numbers, 41% of cases aren't even reported. And that's for violent crimes like robberies, rapes, murders, of course, and aggravated assaults. Most of those, 41% aren't reported. Then you take into consideration that 43% of the ones that are reported aren't solved. And so you're like, well, then these are really small numbers, given the fact that 43% of these cases aren't even solved. So they don't know who the perpetrator is. So it's impossible to actually put the statistics in there about race, because you don't know who the race of the perpetrator is. You just know the race of the victim. And so that in and of itself can take into consideration how these numbers end up the way they are. So I wanted to put that out there first because I thought that was very interesting, that this isn't actually every case. If cases are going unreported for whatever reason, if cases are unsolved for whatever reason, then that can skew these numbers. That's just something I wanted to put out there, because when I found that out, I was like, well, that makes these numbers even more interesting. So let's get into crime in general, right? Let's look at the numbers in regards to race with crime. So when you look at crime in general, when you look at, and this is between white and black, the statistics they have is white, black, other, and unknown, which is very interesting that they don't flesh it out too much. But with white people, it is over 5 million. And the funny thing is, I couldn't find anything after 2018. So these statistics are coming from 2018. It's not from 2019 or 2020 numbers in here. I don't know. I guess maybe it takes a while for them to accumulate all the numbers. But over 5 million white perpetrators commit crimes commit any crime in general in 2018, and over 2 million black individuals committed a crime or were arrested for a crime in 2018. Now, when you look at murder, there are 6,088 white victims and 7,047 black victims. And in regards to arrest, there's 3,953 white people being arrested for murder and 4,778 black people being arrested for murder. Now you're like, oh wow, those numbers are different. Like, okay, black people are committing more murders, right? But then you're looking at the fact that this is only, again, taking into consideration people who commit one victim, or there's one perpetrator. So when you look at things like mass shootings and spree killings, you see that white people are way more proportionally able to do mass shootings, with 65 white people being the perpetrator of mass shootings and only 21 black people being the perpetrator of mass shootings in 2018. So you're like, okay, so they're not taking those statistics into mind when they're looking at these victims. So there's a lot more victims that were killed by white people who did mass shootings. Or if you look at times when there's perpetrators who are more than one perpetrator, that's not taken into consideration either. And then when you look at the statistics of just violent crime in general, so that's not just murder, that's again considering murder, rape, aggravated assault, and robbery, there is 199,533 white offenders who have committed violent crimes, which is 46%. And then there is 187,128 black people who have committed, offenders who have committed violent crime in 2018, which is 43%. And then you look at the victims, there's over 258,000 white victims, which is 60% of all victims of violent crimes in 2018, as well as 142,539 black victims, which is only 33%. Okay, so let's look at who is committing the crimes against which race. When you look at white versus white, black versus black, and interracial crimes, you look at, and unfortunately the only statistics I can find for this is in 2016. I don't know what's up with them calculating statistics for crime. I guess maybe, especially if you're doing the whole United States, there's 50 states, there's multiple districts. That might be why it's taking so long. But black versus black crime, right, in 2016 is 2,570, which would be, you know, it is a lot for a whole year. But then you look at white versus white crime, which is 2,854. So it's higher. And it also shows that when you look at proportion to the amount of crime that's committed from each race of offender, that is more likely for it to be a white person killing another white person and a black person killing another black person. That's essentially how it is. And the reason why, if you look at any statistic, it's because of neighborhoods. Most neighborhoods are unfortunately very segregated. And so when you are killing people that you know, if you are killing a stranger, you're killing somebody in the neighborhood that you live in, more than likely they're going to be somebody that looks like you, right? And that is why it is very easy to see the statistic that yes, black versus black on black crime is very high, but also white on white crime is pretty high too. And honestly, both of them happen about the same rate when you look at the amount of offending that happens for that race. So again, a myth. But I found some things that were very interesting when looking at my statistics. One thing is that crime has been going down drastically over the years. It actually reached its lowest point in 2014 and has gone up a little bit, but since 1993, it's going down exponentially. And I'll put a graph in here so you can see how much is going down. And you probably would think, well, how? We hear all this stuff about Chicago and people getting killed every single day in Chicago, and it's so bad in Chicago, but actually Chicago isn't even the top murder capital in the United States. Another thing that I found to be very interesting is about interracial homicides. They apparently have gone up by 88%, which is possibly because of the difference, the fact that people have more transportation to go different places, like for work, school, and interracial relationships that can cause more crimes to happen between these different races. So that's actually been going up, and the crime intraracially has been going down. And I found this to be really interesting because we're talking about black on black crime, but honestly, that's been going down if you look at the numbers. So I'm kind of confused as to why we're consistently bringing this up. That's why I said it's very interesting. And then another thing that I realized that in doing my research is policing. Now you're probably like, well, what does that have to do with anything, Francine? Well, policing has a lot to do with it, because if you ever lived in the inner city, myself, I did, you know the police is always on patrol, they're always around, they're everywhere. But if you get into a nicer neighborhood, not so much. And you probably think, well, yeah, because that's where more crime is happening. And we can get into how crime happens, whether, I'm going to do a whole video about that next week, actually, about what causes crime, where crime comes from, and why certain people are more likely to be seen as criminal than other people. But a lot of times they're in those neighborhoods because they want to get more people and stop more people so they can have higher numbers. And who is less likely to be able to fight a case? Who is more likely to possibly have some small infractions? They think people of color. So they're in areas of people of color a lot more. And when you look at stops, traffic stops, people of color are much higher rate than their white counterparts in being stopped at a traffic stop. When I was looking into it, in places like New York, Black people are 8 times more likely to be stopped by a cop in a traffic stop for no apparent reason, for less reasons than their white counterparts. Case in point, if you have a white person who's been speeding and then you have a Black person who maybe has been, seeming suspicious, they're more likely to get pulled over than a white person, which I find to be very interesting. Another thing that I found to be very interesting is that 23% of stops by people of color end up being with use of force. Now, you're probably like, what does this have to do with the crime rate, Francine? Well, those people, if your use of force is necessary, then they are more likely to be arrested and more likely to be searched because they're thinking, okay, this is probable cause now, we can search a car. And that means that Black people are more likely to be searched than white people. It's like, you look at the number of arrests and you see that, right off the bat, when it comes to all crimes, Black people are more likely to be arrested than Black people. But then you look at the inconsistencies of how Black people are being pulled over and how they're being policed and how, there's more police presence in their communities. And you think, yeah, it's disproportionate to amount of percentage in the population because, we aren't a majority, but we have a very high level of rates of being arrested. And you look at the fact that there's more police in those neighborhoods, that has a lot to do with it. And they're more likely to get stopped, and they're more likely to be searched, and they're more likely we can get into stop and frisk, because that's a whole, this video will be on forever if we get into that. But I just wanted to do this video mainly because, especially with everything going on with police brutality and people speaking up about that in the more recent months with the whole George Floyd situation and Black Lives Matter movement getting a resurgence. And there's always this, Black on Black crime. You always, and this is another thing that I wanted to talk about, but I couldn't get much research into it, is like the media. How the media portrays certain crimes. Now, if you look at the news, and I hate watching the news, I don't watch the news very often. You look at the news, 9 times out of 10, you're going to see this crime happen in our community. We need to talk about this crime. We're going to consistently put crime in front of your face, and usually the perpetrator is a Black person, right? And that's kind of how it is, because again, like I said, we're more likely to be arrested, we're more likely to be policed. And so when you think of crime, you think of Black on Black crime. That's how crime happens. But you don't look at the fact that a lot of times their white counterparts are also getting arrested at a higher rate, and they're not being publicized. And I find that to be very interesting. And that is how the idea that Black on Black crime is such a big deal, because if violent crime is happening at a more proportionate rate by white people, but you also are only seeing Black people on television being arrested, your mind, you think this happening more often, right? And that's why I think it's very interesting, because not only is it intraracial crime is more likely to happen than anything else, it's also the fact that they're being policed more, the fact that they're being charged more, and also you're looking at the fact that they're being publicized more. All three of those things add to this idea that this is a bigger problem than it is. Now, granted, like I said, crime is going down. Even then, you don't think that, because you're seeing more and more stuff on TV about people being arrested, people being put in jail, and you think crime is going up, crime rate is going up. I read an article about how the perception of crime is completely different than it actually is, because most people think crime is going up because of the media portrayal of crime in inner cities. And when I researched it, I was like, really? It's going down? I wouldn't think so, because you see so many things on the news. That's why I don't like watching the news, because it's such a different idea of what's really going on that you think things are going differently than they are. And also you gotta take into consideration that if we're always publicizing stuff on the news, but 43% of these cases aren't even being solved. So those people you may see on the news might not even be the real perpetrator. And then there's that, they don't follow up on that. So I just wanted to do this video. I thought this was really interesting. I actually thought this would be a lot more into this research than it was, because I was ready to sit down and have a good old read through of a bunch of articles. But honestly, it's very easy to put together the numbers when you look at the fact that the numbers aren't completely everything, that there's a whole lot missing from these numbers. Then you look at the fact that the inflation of the news and the news sensationalization of crime on television and how that misconstrues your idea of how crime is going, because it is going down. And then you look at the fact that all intraracial cases are at a higher rate than anything else. And then you look at the fact that interracial crime is actually becoming a bigger deal. And the whole black on black crime myth, it's just a myth. It is something that people want to use to to take away from a very important topic that we need to talk about. And personally, I just wanted to research this because I thought, even though I already knew this, I just thought that it would be really a really good thing to have a video that actually shows you, like, look, this is the truth. Read it, look at it. I'm going to put it in the description all the places I got these articles from, all real numbers, all taken from real legitimate sources. And just shut up. Just shut up about it, please. Like, yes, black crime in general is a very important thing that we need to handle. Killing children, like, a lot of children have been killed recently in a lot of shootings, and that is very horrible to see. I don't think that it's something we shouldn't be caring about, but I do think that it's something that we can't just be like, well, what about this? It's like, no, both are important, both need to be handled, but you can't invalidate one with the other. That's it. That's all I gotta say. I'm gonna shut up now. Like I said, for today, tomorrow, and Thursday, there will be 3 different things that I'm going to talk about that are very important that I think that people need to shut up about because they're not true. The one tomorrow is probably going to make a lot of people angry, so that should be fun. That being said, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, put them in the comment section below. And if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.